So while aiming in Supervive may seem pretty simple at first glance, you know, just put your crosshair on the enemy, it's really not that simple. Supervive has 2.5 dimensions rather than just being a standard top-down game, so there's a lot of unique stuff that happens with elevation changes and just how you pan your camera and how your character moves in general. So guys, I'm Dunmere, I'm a rank 1 peak Supervive player, and I'm going to give you guys a aim guide for how to play the game, using my 800 hours I have in this game so far. So in this, there's going to be 3 sections. There's going to be some initial base tips on what you should actually be aiming for and some complexity with that. And then I'm going to talk about how to counteract your own aiming and your camera movement. And then I'm going to talk about how to counteract your character's movement and elevation changes. All right, so starting off, it's important to know that in Supervive, your character's hitbox and enemy character hitboxes do not actually have any real relevance in terms of what you're hitting. Instead, it is this circle underneath you. It's a little bit difficult to tell, so I'll use this little jump pad here to show you. But when I'm in the air, there is a circle underneath me, and that is my true hitbox, right? So I showed it to you there. That is what you should be aiming for. When you're right on top like this, it doesn't look like different, but as you can see here, when I'm jumping off of this, you can see that my hitbox starts getting pretty separated from where my real body is, right? And this is what it will look like if you're shooting at an enemy with that. So it's really, really important to first go into your settings and make sure that you have this setting turned on in the first place, which is show character ground circles, and then to make sure that you're aiming for that, right, as opposed to aiming for their body. Because if they're right here and they jump across this and you aim, for them and aim slightly to the left, you would potentially, like, you miss aim slightly to the left. In this circumstance, you would miss, right? So it's useful to not do that. That is the most important first thing. Aim for the circle, not the body. But another important thing to understand is that when you are at an elevation change, below the baseline level in the abyss, this red circle starts appearing above you. And this red circle is actually where your true hitbox is. That sounds really weird because you can see how far away I am from that. But if you aim for my body here, you won't hit me. You will just hit this red dot here, right? Which again, is even more noticeable when I pan the camera so you can see, it starts messing with that section. It's to my top right instead of being on me, right? So it's a big deal. I'll go quickly mess around with this bot here and show you what that looks like. So again, right there, a little bit difficult to see, but the true hitbox of this character in the abyss is this red thing right there. So if I hit that, then I will kill him, right? And so that's what you need to be paying attention for. All right, so now we're going to get actually into how to do the section for counteracting your camera. And this is really important just with how the whole game functions, right? So with the way that your camera is, and it has this panning ability, if you have the correct settings, it's going to have 2 areas, right? It's going to have the first one, which is a dead zone. All right, so where your camera will not move at all when it's in this, and then another area where it max pans out to, and then it will no longer move, right? And you can go into the settings and you can mess around with these here. You can set your dead zone percentage of the screen and your max zone percentage of the screen. What I have right now, about 0.67 and 0.87, is I think really good. I play around with this a lot. But that with lock to cursor, no stabilization, and then max camera speed and max pan distance are going to give you maximal control of all of this and the ability to aim around however you want and be in complete control of your thing. Any other settings you use are going to be trading that off for control of your ability to aim or your ability to look around, right? So for example, if you lower the pan distance, well, you just actually can't look as far. So that's bad, right? And if you lower the camera speed, that actually doesn't work because I need to remove lock to cursor stabilization. If I was to add eye stabilization, right, you can see it's moving me slower. And so if I am trying to look around, it's just not doing it as well, right? So you're losing value. So having locked cursor, pan distance max, and then these settings are going to give you a lot of control, right? But what is important to understand and why I use these settings specifically is that in between this zone here, between the max pan distance and the minimum pan distance, your cursor is no longer moving the same effective range, right? So if I'm here and I throw my hammer half of the distance, right, it goes here. and then I can almost reach full before I throw it. If I start getting into this area where it's starting to move a lot more, right? Even though my cursor on my screen is moving the same, the camera is also panning. So at this point where it starts changing, I'm getting my mouse movement, and then I'm also getting the camera itself moving, right? So I'm here, and then I barely move the mouse, and then it's all the way out, right? As opposed to where I have to move my mouse like 2 times the distance down here. Hopefully you guys understand that. I'll give you guys, I'll mess with the settings to explain it better. If I have a really low dead zone and a really high max zone, well, as soon as I get like right here, you know, I'm moving my mouse around a little bit. As soon as I get here, I'm getting double movement, right? And so I have 2 different like aiming speeds effectively. I'll do it a little bit differently to show you exactly how it works. But I have 2 different aiming speeds right here. This is like, you know, I'm just aiming around my character. It's perfect, but then right here, it's changed, you know? And I have this one where there's no movement, this one where there's high movement, and then this one where there's none, right? So these are the same, the one inside, the one on the outside, but then this one in the middle is different, right? And so these settings that I have are going to make, like, this is both a benefit and a curse, right? Because you need to be able to have the ability to look as far as you can on your camera, but you need to also not have it mess up your own aim. Because if you don't have settings similar to mine, and you have, like I said, a lower, let's say a lower dead zone, and so most, like this whole area, your mouse is constantly moving, you're gonna not have consistent aim, right? And so in this area, it's like, so like if you're here and you're like trying to aim here up to this guy, at this point nothing's changing, but as soon as you get here, it starts changing. And so you have to like understand that from here to here, like this kind of a flick that's consistent, if you flick anything past this distance, it stops being consistent, right? And so it'll just mess up your aim, is like basically the core simplicity of it. So running settings just like this and having a, like essentially trying to pick whatever characters you play the most and setting your dead zone settings so that you don't aim in that range will make you a lot more accurate, right? Because if I'm here, like within close range on somebody, I want to be able to aim and have this not move at all, which is why I have my dead zone set about this distance, right? I can do my close range stuff without having it move at all when I'm on top of somebody. You know, I'm like really like in, you know, like a fight here, and I'm like trying to make sure I do this properly, right? Get out of here. Done. But when you're far aiming, you want to have it so that you can just aim past all of this and then not have it change anymore, right? And so it's going to modify for character, and you have to like understand that some characters aren't going to be like, they're not going to match up with each other. Like my Oath might not be the best for my settings. It might be better for like the Kingpin that I was playing or something like that. But this is how it's going to be, right? So you have to be really cognizant of the fact that you will mess up your own aim by this, and that's going to you know, mess with that, right? And so you have to adjust, and you have to basically think of this area in the middle here as an area that you don't want to aim in, and so you adjust your settings and just be aware that you are going to be trying to aim your cursor outside of it or inside of it, right? And not like in the middle here where my aim is now messing up a lot. Though having said that, there's another setting which I do recommend using. Sorry. I do recommend using, which is your the quadratic movement. This would seem like it's gonna mess you up, right? But because right when instead of it panning at the same distance, within this changing zone, it pans increasingly, which is like I said, it seems like it'll be problematic, but it's gonna give you just a little bit more forgiveness of like you aiming at the inside of your dead zone and then you slightly aim past it, right? So maybe I'm tripping, but I think that's better to do. Yeah, so having finished that segment, I'm going to talk now about counteracting your own movement. So in a shooter game, or any game that has shooter type mechanics, you are always having to counter aim your own movement, right? Because your your movement moves your camera, right? And so when I'm on this strike here and I'm currently able to aim directly at her and hit her, like boom, great, I'm hitting her. If I move to the left, I don't have to, like, I will no longer hit her, right? So when I move left, I need to move my mouse to the right, which is effectively me aiming over here. I'm moving to the left and I'm aiming over here. Boom, right? Mission accomplished. In Supervive, on most characters, they like have a lot of self-slow when they're doing this, so you can't really strafe that well. So it's not really that big of a deal. You will have characters like Shiv that might have some more of this. Shiv, where you're like, you know, you're here, and then you really have to like be like pre-placing your next one and understanding that you're having to counter aim it, right? And that's really useful to do. But on most characters, it's not really that big of a deal. However, Supervive adds another element to this where there is a like the vertical displacement of it. So in a game like Overwatch or whatever, when you would jump, it would raise your camera slightly, or you would crouch, it would lower your camera slightly. It could mess you up, but it really wasn't that big of a deal, right? You're not aiming that far off somebody. However, in Supervive, with all of the verticality, you have to be of both being below and above people. You have to understand that like the slightest adjustment will mess your aim up, right? Whenever you're moving. Like as you can see here, like even just like jumping is potentially like risking messing up my aim, right? Because here I hit her. I mean, it's not going far enough. So okay, here I hit her, and there I don't, because I'm jumping, right? Because it's changing my aim that much. And this isn't even like the most extreme one, right? The more extreme ones are going into the abyss. And so here's my base hammer placement. It goes straight through the strike. Great. If I fall into the abyss and then I use it, look how much different it aims, right? And I let it just drag my mouse downward because it does that. But if I'd aimed further out here, you know, here's my normal one. If I fall into the abyss, look how much further, like, it messes my aim up, right? So whenever you're going below things, you have to understand, you have to adjust to counteract that, right? It's really important to like track in this game and be in control of your mouse. And this is why I talk so much about the aim stabilization stuff. And having it be, you know, or like making sure you're aiming properly within this range and aiming like past it or underneath it. Like I said, really important when you're down here in the abyss, especially when you know you're abyss fighting someone and you're like twerking out a little bit here and you're just like trying to hit their thing, and like, oh my gosh, right? It's really important to like make sure you're doing it properly, and be aware that whenever you're falling downwards, you're gonna have to counteract to aim up onto things that are like things that are above you. So yeah, everything's gonna shift like basically you gotta like imagine that the whole map's shifting up, and so you need to aim further up or it's going to force you further down. So I have to aim up to catch them and hit them. Now, fortunately, there is something useful where if you are paying attention to like this red dot instead of you, this setting here, I'll show you really quick. This setting, where is it? Game limit or show aiming laser. It aims off of this little red dot thing. So you can just look at that and you can see where you're aiming, right? You don't have to actually look at your character. And so that can help a little bit. It's a little bit trippy, a little bit confusing, but that's really useful to do. Having said that, also, it's really important to counteract your own movement when you are using a jump pad, because you have the same effect, right? So here's my normal throw, hit this jump pad. And it's a little bit difficult to show you because of, you know, the character I'm playing. I'll put another jump pad over here. Here's my standard throw. Here's my throw further up in the air. You know, it displaced it like that much. And that was like me not even being up in the air throwing it, because it wouldn't place my hammer down. But I'm because it starts aiming on a different level. Right? It's just hugely different. And so something else that's important to understand, another little thing about counteracting your own movement, is that you there are different aiming planes in this game. When you're, because of the way that like the 2.5 dimensional stuff works, You can hit people, like I said, when you're below them. Boom, I hit her, great. And you can also hit them when you're in the air and you're above them, right? So you can still hit when you're above them. But, you can do things like that. Not the best example on the melee characters, because the melee characters actually don't have the same hitbox. Like, they don't have a hitbox that goes up and down. Theirs is much more limited. But anyway, with this way that this works, you need to, like, when you're above a certain elevation, so like basically I'll show you rocket jumper or bishop because she's really useful, and we'll be able to show this better. But like when you're on the same plane as them and you're just a little bit above them, you can still hit them, right? But if you get like too high, your shots go above them. And so I triple dashed here and I got too high. And you can see that with like the way that the aiming laser shows. I'll show you with a jump pad. When I jump pad, my aiming laser is on the ground here, and then it's in the air. And so it's in the air for the majority of this. And so this is really useful for a little side tech here. You can't actually take damage from something that's not in the same plane as you, right? So which is what I'm talking about. So, like I said, yeah, I can't hit her when I'm, like, I can hit her here, great, right? But when I'm above her, I can't hit her. But she also can't hit me. So when you're above them like this, you're safe to glide until the laser goes down. Which it doesn't actually show you when you're gliding like that, because they want to troll you apparently. But it is still there. And so it's important to watch for that and wait for that, right? And so while you're having to, make sure that you're adjusting your aim, because in the same way that like I told you, you have to aim down or counteract down when you're getting height, and maybe you're even like getting a lot of height, right? Or I'll show you something even more crazy with the hover wings, which should be in here. Oh, that's an interesting animation for that one. Let's see. I'll reset my cooldowns real quick. And I'm getting like giga high up in the air. I'm getting like some really big variations, right? And so there's some things you can do to get some absolute like some crazy height variations, right? And so while you're going down, you need to be making sure that you're paying attention to when you can actually hit things, when they can hit you, and then counter aiming it, right? If I'm doing something like this where I like take a jump pad, hit my wings, and then triple do like this, like I'm gonna be like totally missing my aim if I do that. Granted, if you're above and below, like it doesn't change that much, but it would for like a location targeted ability.